Hi, I'm here with Michael. It's Izaz here.
Hi, Izaz.
Hi. So, today's podcast wanted to pick your brains really
That won't take long.
on the online safety bill. So, if I can cast your mind back to May 2021, when the bill was drafted and published.
Yeah.
And we're almost we're a year on. So
12 months later, you've probably been following it with Nadine Dorries and the various comments and the desire by the UK Parliament to be the first legislative body, stroke country, to actually introduce some what the UK government considers to be affirmative, positive action in protecting people from online material. And it's caused, as you can imagine, a bit of a debate, both legally and from a society and from a collective's perspective, as to the impact this will have on, for example, free speech. And, for example, protecting the rights of individuals from being abused. And it's that, that fine balance between people having the ability to take abuse under the auspices of free speech, or do you protect people from being abused? And how far do politics and how far does legislation become involved? And then we're stepping in terms of, you've just seen the news about Elon Musk, and immediately said this morning that he'll introduce Trump back to Twitter. And there's been an outcry because Sadiq Khan referred this morning also, whilst in America, that when Trump was removed from Twitter, his online hate inbox pretty much disappeared. So it's a fascinating debate, and how far do you bring in legislation? Because, I punch you in the face, that's violence, and the law's there to protect. But I say something that you don't like or which is offensive. Sticks and stones will break my bones, but names will never hurt me. And how far do you bring in the law to prevent people saying what they want?
Yeah, I think it's
fascinating, isn't it?
Yeah, it's an incredibly difficult thing to, no doubt, legislate against as well, because over time, something that's offensive at one point could become the norm at another point. And there's obviously cultural differences, there's religious issues to address, and something that is permissible to be said on social media in one country may not be allowed in another country. And with the actual postings of social media and the way that the material can be circulated can often lead to many issues between what's acceptable and what's not acceptable in the eyes of people.
You see, it's a fascinating area because it begs one to understand whether or not there's any need for new legislation. I mean, presumably they've got existing legislation. You've got the Malicious Communications Act. You've got the any criminal legislation can be used to, if someone was making any sexual or racial comments online. And I don't know why the need is for this. And as well, it is only words. Things, the Sex Pistols in 1976 said the F word on TV. And I think it was in the news. I would have been, 11 or 12. And it was like 6 o'clock in the evening. And it was national TV for weeks because they used the F word, Johnny Rotten. And there's been documentaries and films about it. And, now you can hear that on flipping watching the football, with the commentary.
Well, you hear your kids say it and they're under 10.
Exactly. So it just shows how society's changed, benefit for the right or for the wrong reasons. That's another topic. But the onus as well, from a legal perspective, is quite interesting because all these social media groups are going to have to review their terms and conditions specifically for England and Wales, specifically for the UK, I should say, because our law will be different to other member states and to, well, not member states, other European countries and other jurisdictions. So that's the first thing that I think needs to happen. And the estimated cost for these providers isn't cheap. You know, they have to introduce measures to ensure that sufficient personnel are reviewing and considering what has been posted. And if you think about something like Twitter, it's absolutely huge. The government are promising that we're finally going to be protecting the children who are open to all this. But again, how far does government get involved to protect children as opposed to parents getting in to protect the right measures at home? You know, no one really should be able to access adult material under a certain age unless you have the checks in place. I mean, you wouldn't, if you have a small family, you probably do have the checks in place. But it really is quite an interesting area in terms of how the law seeks to catch up, 20-year catch up with the internet. And I think it's misplaced myself, because I don't see why there is need to bring in specific speech. At the same time, Dominic Raab's talking about amending the Human Rights Act to allow freedom of speech. So you've got this clash of putting in legislation to prevent people speaking their mind. I mean, for example, the chap in Scarborough, I think he was convicted under the Malicious Communications Act of tweeting when the airport in Scarborough, Leeds Airport, I think it's near Scarborough, cancelled the flight. And he said something along the lines of, by tweeting, I'm going to blow you all up. It was a facetious comment made in the, clearly a joke. Now, he was convicted of that, which I think it was about 6 years ago. Looking 6 years later, that seems rather harsh. The Scottish chap whose dog, every time you referred to Jews, I think, the dog did a little Nazi salute with his paw. True story. And he was convicted in a Scottish court. And again, online. And I think there's going to be much more of that type of police knocking on people's doors saying, you've tweeted this. Now, surely that can't be the role of the police. Mm. And I think, the freedom of speech and efforts to police freedom of speech are very worrying. Because, like you said earlier on, somebody may be offended by a joke, and somebody's not going to be offended at all. Like Jimmy Carr, that terrible joke Jimmy Carr made a few weeks ago about the travellers. People thought it was hilarious. Some other people thought it was the most disgusting thing that's come out of anybody's mouth. Yeah. But do governments prevent? Yeah. It's a really tricky one.
Yeah. I think a very interesting point you mentioned was, and specifically in terms of focus, is in relation to businesses. So businesses that have an online presence, that have some sort of chat area or some sort of fora where people can exchange ideas or communicate with one another. This sort of thing would be very, very key, because the business itself wouldn't want to be caught up with any issues with regards to this, or breach of any other sort of legislation relating to their online presence, and any comments, ideas, or images, or videos that are shared through their platform in any way, shape or form that would breach any legislation. So I think it's very, very key for people listening out there that have an online presence to really drill down and look at their terms and conditions, and perhaps seek some guidance and help as to any areas of improvement with regards to that, because the laws are constantly evolving and changing, and as a result you don't want to be sat in a stalemate situation whereby your terms are out of date, or they don't take care of any given circumstances that could render you being liable or being part of a claim in relation to these sort of aspects.
No, I agree completely, and I know for a fact that a lot of providers are very concerned as to the amount of involvement and time they need to devote to this. But at the same time, such is the state of the finances of these providers and how much money they're making, then I don't think it's beyond the reasonable for them to take the necessary steps to ensure that there are sufficient staff, are sufficient personnel to deal with some of the online hate. I mean, Facebook's notorious for it, isn't it? Some of the hate. And, you know, a good argument put forward by the anti-collectivists, the freedom of speech devotees, is that Twitter allows the Taliban but has banned Trump. So it almost seems to be Twitter, Taliban haven't breached any of Twitter's guidelines because it's all algorithms. So there's a lack of personal interaction. And it's the algorithms and the AI, I think, this is a great cause of concern, because that drives the right and the left split. That drives the hate, because the algorithms have been set up, designed for that. And you can see it on Twitter when you wake up in the morning, who's trending. It's trending as a controversial topic and it's pushing people left and right. But anyway, that's by the by. Thank you very much. We're going to be doing a lot more on the online bill via the Stay Legal website, and so tune in, and more coming your way. Thanks very much, See you soon.
Take care. Thank you. Bye.